Hey soccer fans, welcome back to Feed the Fire, a Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer podcast. I'm your host Nick, and in this episode, we're starting our new format with our new partnership, which I'll tell you a little bit about, but we are really going to get into the Chicago Fire's loss 4-2 at Orlando City over the weekend. This was definitely a heat check for the Fire, who are coming in on a 2-game win streak and a 4-game point streak. We're going to take a look at everything that went wrong, and is it preventable in the future? We are going to check on that and more in this week's episode. Hey soccer fans, welcome back again as we are talking about the Chicago Fire's latest match against Orlando City, a 4-2 loss. Before we dive into all of the action, whether you want to or not, we're going to do it. I've got a few housekeeping announcements as usual, especially with the growth of the show. I want to keep you all updated on it. First of all, I want to give you a brief shout out to our new partner, SportsSpider. If you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, SportsSpider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay updated as possible on the Chicago Fire, hit the link in the description below. Check out SportsSpider, that's spider with a Y.com, and find all the news that you need there. Speaking of partnerships, I hinted at it the last couple episodes. It is finally over the line. I'm happy to announce a new partnership with Believe, a sports and entertainment studio that produces premium digital sports and pop culture content. So as a result of them bringing Feed the Fire into their national network, there's going to be a little bit of a formatting change. We're going to be doing 2 or 3 episodes a week, probably 15 to 20 minutes or so each episode, instead of 1 hour-long episode. Yep, there's going to be some ads, but as a result, they are bringing me along with a StreamYard account, with some other graphics, with potential editing help. So we're going to slowly improve the show over the next few months with this new partnership. So bear with me. Let me know your feedback, positive or negative, so that way we can continue to improve Feed the Fire and grow the show. Also, as a content housekeeping matter, in last week's episode when I was talking about the Chicago Fire's victory over Toronto, I kept saying TFC goalkeeper Sean Johnson. That's just force of habit calling him that, and I guess former Chicago Fire goalkeeper was at the forefront of my mind as well. He actually did not play in that match. He was getting ready for Copa America. He's on the roster for the USMNT there. Instead, it was TFC playing Canadian goalkeeper Luka Gavran, and my apologies, like I said, force a habit, just saying TFC goalkeeper Sean Johnson, former Chicago Fire goalkeeper Sean Johnson. But it was Luka Gavran that took the L on that big Fire 4-1 win, and it is the Chicago Fire, though, who took the L this weekend at Orlando City. And like I said, this was a major heat check for the Chicago Fire. All the fun of tucking in jerseys, the Jonathan Dean King Club, the general just good vibes of everything that had been building without Xherdan Shaqiri, all of that is over. This match showed just how far the Fire are as an organization and as a team to just be competitive with the Eastern Conference. So if you remember, the Chicago Fire had a loss and a draw to the New England Revolution when they were the worst team in the East, and now they have a loss and a draw to Orlando City, who were one of the worst teams in the East as well. And now Orlando's up at 10, New England's at 12, and the Chicago Fire are the worst team in the Eastern Conference with just under a point per game. They have 0.95 points per game. Oh, but fear not, at least they're not the worst in the league. They're still better than Kansas City and St. Louis. Just barely. So, wooden spoon in play for the Fire. Now, in this match, the Orlando goals came from Facundo Torres in the 4th minute. Again, deja vu all over again here, Fire. Not only did he score in the 4th minute at Soldier Field a couple of weeks back, scores in the 4th minute now at Orlando. Also, deja vu all over again. Back last season, it was this midsummer stumble against Orlando City with Facundo Torres kind of leading the way as well. So, I don't know, has he replaced Corey Burke as the Chicago Fire killer? We'll see. Unless he gets transferred, he might be around for a couple more years just racking up goals against the Fire. I think he's got, what did they say, like 6 goals against the Fire in 4 or 5 games or something like that. So he loves playing against Chicago. He gets goals in the 4th minute and the 60th minute. Muriel, their other striker, converts a PK in the 20th minute, and Ivan Angulo gets one in the 29th minute. So yeah, if you're counting, that's 3 goals in under 30 minutes that the Fire let in. And it really comes down to one thing. I'm sure there's always, you have people say, there's a lot of things that go into giving up a goal, but really, if you want to look at what it really stood out to me was the defensive positioning on all of these goals. You saw that the defender who was marking the shooter on each of the goals was backpedaling into their own 18-yard box. And even when they were already in their own 18-yard box, they kept backpedaling. Look at Torres driving at Dean on that first goal. Dean just keeps going back and back and back, and then allows him to cut onto his favored left foot. That is terrible scouting and terrible execution to allow Facundo Torres to cut back onto his left foot. You look at when Angulo gets pulled down by Aragoni, and if Aragoni didn't get him, Suquet probably would have. He's driving at them, and the defenders backpedal and cannot recover and cannot get in front of him and end up behind him. Same thing on Torres' second goal of the match. He is dribbling across the face of goal and then shooting with his left foot again. All the defenders are stepping back, letting him have that space. No one is stepping up and forcing him either to cut back on his right foot or forcing him to have to play the ball to another player. They are just allowing him the space, and he's good enough that he's going to punish you every time. And unfortunately, Orlando gets their groove back against the Chicago Fire defense, who was just reeling in this match. Now, the Chicago goals come from Marin Haile Selassie, a 53rd minute PK, and a Hugo Kuipers goal in the 69th minute. Two things I want to say about these Fire goals. I tweeted it out, and people kind of had some reaction to it. I said, Haile Selassie did score the PK. I don't know why he's the one taking it. And actually, it was asked about in the post-game conference. Frank Klopas addressed the question, and he said that the Chicago Fire have an order to who takes the penalty kicks. But in this case, it was Marin Haile Selassie that picked it up, put it on the spot, and converted the shot. So even though they had an order, which the way it sounded from the question and the response from Klopas is that Gutierrez and Kuipers are in that order and probably ahead of Selassie, but he was the one that picked it up and put it down, which, good for him, but also, yikes. If our $12 million DP striker and our homegrown central midfielder who's finally growing in confidence and we want to give him the keys to the team, Brian Gutierrez, if neither of them said, I'm taking the PK, maybe they didn't want to cause a scene, I don't know, but if they're ahead of Selassie in the order, why aren't they trying to take it? That bothers me a little bit. And maybe I'm reading too much into the post-game conference, and I don't think they showed it on camera during the game. If there was any discussion amongst the players, I didn't see it at least. But the fact that Kuipers and Gutierrez did not want to take that penalty kick and that it was Selassie, that's a little disconcerting for the confidence of those two guys. But hey, I guess, good for Selassie stepping up and doing it. Also, I wanted to talk about Kuipers for a minute because it was something that John Donovan and I were texting about, our featured guest John Donovan here. He said that, Kuipers has that kind of tenacity in him, and I'm paraphrasing what John said here. And when I talked to my son and his U8 team that I coach, I used the word intensity. Hugo Kuipers has this intensity, has this tenacity that I don't see anyone else on the Fire having, that he is fighting for 90 minutes, as long as Klopas lets him play 90 minutes, I should say. But he is fighting every minute he is on the pitch. And he just is in a different gear. It's like, you get your game face on, you get in the zone. That is him. I just don't see that with some of the other Fire players or any of the other Fire players. A lot of them seem to be going through the motions. Our defenders, yes, they will get intense when they are defending. But Tehran hasn't figured out how to control it. Aragoni sometimes gets a little too loose. Fabian Herbers can become a little reckless with it. You see him picking up a random wild yellow card every 3, 4, 5 games or so, if not less. So he's the one guy that can really hone in that tenacity and that intensity and use it to his advantage to elevate his game. I just don't see it with the rest of the team. That is something that I'm so happy he's continued this long with that intensity and tenacity. despite the Fire's position in the table. I'd hope it would rub off at this point. I would love to see Gutierrez pick that up a little bit, get a little of a chip on his shoulder, and start attacking guys and being a little bit more physical. And we're going to talk about Gutierrez a little bit on defense where that might come in more. Though Gutierrez, again, gosh, how many saves has the post made on Gutierrez this season? Another great driving run forward from the midfield, long distance shot that almost beats the keeper on this one, but again, off the post. I also think a lot of the problem that the Fire experienced in the first half was tactics. Yes, the defense was not ready to prepare it, and a lot of that falls on the defenders for not being up and ready for this game, for not playing the right way, for backpedaling, not getting in the right positions, body positions, that sort of thing. But a lot of it also falls on the coaching staff. It's their job to get the players ready for a game, especially with a Klopas-led coaching staff who is there just to get the players in the right mindset and maybe not break them down where you want to step and all the little minutia that go into preparations of other teams. Tactically, there was a big problem this first half. Let's look at the lineup. That's where it started. We know Chris Brady started in goal. The Fire played a 3-4-2-1, at least according to the lineup card here that MLS Soccer put out. The three-man backline, Mauricio Pineda, Carlos Terán, and Arnaud Souquet. Your four midfielders, left to right, Aragoni, Acosta, Herbers, and Dean. Your two attacking mids, Gutierrez and Haile Selassie, and your striker up front, Hugo Kuipers. Now, to me, this formation is a little deceiving because in such a formation, at least offensively, you're going to see Aragoni and Dean as those outside backs pushing forward on the attack, trying to either link up with Selassie and Gutierrez or play some service into Kuipers. We've also seen Marin Hallasse, though, be more of a second striker to Hugo Kuipers and try to create space for him by dragging defenders away or link up with him and try and create some of his own opportunities. And Brian Gutierrez then comes in more centrally. So even though they lined up in this 3-4-2-1, on offense, it was almost like a 3-3, like a 3-3-2 something or other, some random thing where Gutierrez comes in the middle. You got Hugo Kuipers and Haile Selassie up front. It was almost like a 3-4-1-2 even, or a 3-3-3-1 maybe. I can count. That adds up to 10 field players, right? Yeah. Anyway, all I'm saying though is that tactically on offense, this didn't seem to line up or to really work in this match against Orlando City. In the second half, it produced some better results, and it produced a lot of stats, but it didn't produce the goals here. I think part of the problem also is because you want your formation to really bolster your defense. And that is how Frank Klopas has been lining them up. That his formation is more of defense, and then when you get the ball in offense, you kind of flow with what's natural, with what feels good, with what you know how to do as a player, as a pro, playing the game your whole life kind of a thing. So this did not help the defense at all. I was unsure if Aragoni and Dean were going to drop into a five-man back line or stay a little higher, but the problem was Guti and Marin Haile Selassie weren't getting back. So if you want to have those two lines of four, Selassie or Gutierrez has to drop back and play defense. Can't counterpress if you want those two lines of four. But Klopas wants higher pressing and wants to throw guys forward. If you also want to have Dean and Aragoni drop back into a five-man back line, that leaves just Herbers and Acosta as that first defensive line of two then. And so you've pulled yourself out of a defensive shape because of your offensive shape and what you're trying to do. And it's worked the last couple games because you're playing banged up squads. The TFC squad, I neglected to mention it the last episode, they ended up with like 7 starters out, not just Bernadeschi and Gomes, but like 7 guys were out or something like that between starters and bench players due to injuries. So you could pull it off against them. You could pull it off against Orlando City in Soldier Field, who were happy to settle with an away point, as bad as their form has been on a toe poke goal by Facundo Torres. But when you're in Orlando, a team who likes to attack from up the wings, and this is something I've been talking with some guys on Orlando City shows, and they said, we keep trying to attack up the wing. Ladero coming into the middle has pushed Facundo Torres out to the wing, and they're just not clicking on it. But this particular formation that the Fire lined up in, if this was their defensive formation, this absolutely lends itself to be attacked up the wing. And you saw Orlando do it. They went after Jonathan Dean. They went after Alana Aragoni, and it left, it left a poor result. What can we say? It left Aragoni and Dean exposed out on the wing, while Suke, Turan, and Pineda, and Herbers and Acosta were all in the middle, and while Salase and Gutierrez were further up the pitch, getting counterattacked past. This was a coaching fail. It was the exact wrong formation to play against Orlando City. Also, subbing in Chris Mueller at halftime without really changing your shape isn't an adjustment, not to mention leaving Chihos and Olmsberg on the bench and purposely avoiding trying to go to a more traditional 4-4-2 just to kind of shore up the defense a bit. But hey, Klopa said we needed to go for it. We needed to leave ourselves more exposed to try and counterattack and get some goals back. So maybe I won't harp on that too much, but again, the good vibes are gone, and when the coaching staff has to make an actual tactical decision and an in-game adjustment, they have proven they can't do it. So the formation didn't work. The particular players that were starting were not well suited for this matchup against Orlando City, and it came at a price of 3 goals within the first 30 minutes. By the way, you guys feel bad for Chris Brady yet, if you hadn't already? Anyway, let's take a look at the stats here. Chicago ended up with 57.6% possession, according to MLSsoccer.com. They generated 19 shots, 13 on goal, and their XG was up there. It was over 2. But that just tells you it's by volume. It's typical of the Chicago Fire all season to not generate high-quality opportunities. So here, if you are assigning a 0.2, if you're assigning a 20% chance of each of their shots going in, that's a 2.6, that is a 3.8 XG if you're using the 19 shots. If you're putting the ones on goal, 0.2, which is probably a little more accurate, then you're still getting a 2.6, and the Fire ended up with 2 goals. So they are still not creating efficient chances, high percentage chances in these games. And you got to remember, a penalty kick, depending on what model you use, is between a 0.8 and like a 0.95. So that is a large chunk of their XG on this one. They ended up with 572 total passes, and this is what blew my mind. 90% passing accuracy. Even Orlando City had an 84% passing accuracy. So not a lot of real big defensive actions here. And that's also reflected in the blocked shot statistic. Neither team blocked a shot. So they were letting you pass and score. 3 corners by the Fire, 14 total crosses, 2 offsides, 16 aerial duels won. Here, XG of 2.9. Now you take away, let's just say take away 1 from that penalty attempt, that penalty goal by Salase. Now you're at about a 2 expected goal on 12 shots. So that is less than 20% chance of going in for each shot. And I am not quickly doing math in my head right now, but you get the point. It is low percentage volume, or low percentage shots and a volume of them that made the numbers look a lot better than they really were. Brady was credited with 2 saves. Meanwhile, Studahar for Orlando ended up being credited with 11 saves. It's incredible. 3 clearances by the Fire, 17 for Orlando. So it does show that the Fire did have some sustained pressure against Orlando City and forced them into a lot of desperate defending. Let's see, how many block shots did they have? Oh, 0 block shots, right? But 17 clearances. Now, the Fire committed 12 fouls to Orlando's 11. Each team was given a yellow card. No reds, thankfully. Now, Klopas, and this time I'll agree with him, but it's not good that I'm agreeing with him, because post-game he said he's not going to take much from these stats and these numbers, because when you're down 3-0 early, none of that matters. I agree with him, and sadly I have to agree with him, because it was bad. Also, I was kind of surprised he didn't say anything like I expected. A lot of people were expecting him to be like, well, you know, they went down early and they fought back. We didn't hang our heads. Like, I give them credit for getting the 2 goals. We just couldn't put away those chances. He didn't say anything like that. There were no moral victory undertones in any of his post-game talk, which I liked. And I agree with him. But unfortunately, I'm agreeing with him when everything is negative here. He said you can't go down that early and really harped in on his defenders being ready. And he did say, if you're going to score 2 goals, you got to at least get a result. You got to at least draw and take a point on the road. So to me, though, there does sound like some standards are coming into play, that he's actually starting to quantify things for his players now. So maybe this was his plan all along, and maybe here's that 4D chess meme that Klopas is playing with us, or maybe, it's just kind of the way the season unfolded, fortunately or unfortunately for him, where he can say now, like, we can't have these things, and play the way we are. So I wish it didn't have to come in the 19th match here, but maybe better late than never. Maybe you did need to separate Shaqiri from this team in order to actually start taking some steps forward. Who knows? I don't think it's as simple as just pulling Shaqiri away, because there, as we just discussed for the last 10-15 minutes or so here, that there was a lot else going into the way the Fire played in this game and throughout the season. But at the very least, that is where it stands, and Klopas with some very pointed criticism during the post-game conference. All right, I want to remind everyone as well that our show is sponsored by Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. And Skira Icelandic Spring Water is available at your local 7-Eleven. And with our water break, we always feature our special guest, John Donovan. Take it away.
Nick, John Donovan here, talking about the Chicago Fire and the MLS. So, Nick, we had a game Saturday night, and I was looking forward to this game. I thought the Fire were playing well. I've been a fan of the Orlando coach and his teams. They've always seemed to be able to bring up people from the younger age squads and develop them. Really, Pareja is one of the real premier MLS coaches. It might not be this year, but he's always in the money. I was surprised when he came back from Mexico so quickly, but he is an MLS coach. The Fire lost the game 4-2, and they were down 3-0 at the 30th minute. And I just don't know what to say about the team itself. I always have been told that your team is as strong as you are down the middle, which would be fullback, center mid, and center fullback. In all honesty, Kuipers is one hell of a player. The guy dogs it. He really puts the effort out there. But we don't have a center midfielder. It's almost embarrassing that a guy who's been around football for so long, I've been around soccer for about 70 years. And I could not recognize anybody that was legitimately playing that center midfielder point. Yes, Acosta would float into it from time to time, or Harbers would float into it, but that's not the way the game is successful. You got to have people play in a position and get used to their teammates, how they play. Now, the Chicago Fire under Klopas just has not been able to do that. He constantly walks into a game with a new plan, a new setup of people, and it just frustrates me to see that there's no center mid. You know, you look at teams like Manchester City, or even St. Louis, or some of the LAFC. They've all got that guy that is always accessible to the ball. He's the lead outlet. The Fire are constantly turning back to the goalie. And then up and above that, when they Fire do have the ball, it's Tehran standing there waiting for people to move. There's not a lot of movement on the field. So where does the Fire go with this? I really expected to open up my email tonight and check out the Chicago Fire page and see Klopas had resigned. I really thought that the team and Klopas as a guy would realize he can't do this job. But apparently Joe Mansueto is a man that when he signs a contract, although he didn't do this with Ezra, he'll let him go. Or he'll keep the contract till the end so he doesn't have to pay out that extra money. If I was him right now, I would let Klopas go, and I would bring up the gentleman that's doing the Fire too. He knows the players. He's in town. He's successful. He's got a team that's playing quite well, and just give the crowd a chance at something other than Klopas, which has been a constant for the last 15 years. Really, oddly enough, the Fire have been bad for 15 years. So it is time for a change. It really is. Who played well in this game for the Fire? I thought Kuipers, again, he's a real legit center forward. He's just got passion. He can shoot with both legs. He's really a good player. If he only had somebody that would work with him to build up, cutting plays and so forth. It's just not there. So, second topic that has kind of, I'm sure, frustrated everybody listening to this podcast is Shaqiri. So he's over in Switzerland playing, and the man is making $141,000 a game that he's not playing well. He's asking for a transfer. Isn't that wonderful for the guy? He comes over here, supposed to be a great example for young players, supposed to move the team up to an extra, to playoff positionings, and he's asking for a transfer to a team called Galatasaray. It's a Turkish team. If the Fire can get out of this with any of their money back, I'd let him swing. I mean, he is not a good addition to the field. He's argumentative. He's after the referees. He's after everybody other than himself. It's just really time for him to go. But we will have to see. As I said, I'd love to see that second level team coach come up and take over the Fire at least till the end of the season. The game just was off balance right from the beginning. Second half, the Fire came back. They looked like they were trying to present a battle. They did score 2 goals, but they just didn't have it. This idea of playing with 3 in the back and wingmen just is not working. I mean, Angola, the left wing of Orlando, just burned the Fire's defense. They could not stay with him, nor could the left side. Dean got burned twice. He backed up on Torres in the penalty area. You can't do that. I know that there's a tendency for them to get red cards, but you can't back up in that penalty area. Torres had a beautiful shot because Dean was backing up. Brady had no chance on that one. And then he scored another beautiful golazo from the top of the area. I really like Torres' play. I mean, he's had a rough year so far. But if I had money on the league, I would say Oscar Pareja probably will make the playoffs with this squad. It's a good team. The game itself, we've put up with this style of play for a long time, and Chicago really is a soccer city. We could support a good team really well, and all they've got to do is make a twist in this management team that Mansueto has created. He's probably just sitting there awful frustrated at some of his decisions. So, hi, Mike, Nick. Someday we're going to have something positive to go after. It'll be interesting to see whether the Fire currently are in last place, which you just got to shake your head. I think they're the second or third leading spender in the MLS, and they just can't get results. So, all right, Nick, hope everything's well. Love to listen to your podcasts. Have a good day.
John, thanks again for all your commentary and for tuning in each and every week to the Fire matches, as painful as it might be for a lot of people or for you. But we appreciate you contributing each and every week and supporting us as well as we go through this new partnership with Believe, growing the show, networking, doing all those great things. Thank you, John. It wouldn't have been possible without your support and without the support of Skira. Now let's take a little bit of look at the Chicago Fire. A couple other headlines that we need to point out. Federico Navarro gets his green card. He will no longer take up an international roster spot. So what does this mean other than the obvious roster implications? Well, number one, it makes him a lot more valuable around the MLS. There was rumors about him being courted or having interest expressed by Boca Juniors in Argentina. Maybe they just like the fact that he is young, athletic, and a bit of a bruiser, and maybe they can work with him in that sense. But the Chicago Fire didn't want to let him go for less than $10 million in a transfer fee. Assuming that's true, and I doubt they'd ever get a real offer over $10 million for Fede Navarro, who's had some injuries, who's having a bad season. But regardless, if that's just their kind of bluff oversell, and maybe they end up with $6 million, hey, I think that would be a really good transfer for him. But he is valuable to maybe Boca Juniors or a club in Argentina. He is now more valuable with that green card to other MLS clubs. And if the Chicago Fire do need to shed some salary space, that's one way to do it. Though I don't think he's taking up a huge hit, a huge salary hit this season. But again, we'll see. And it does give a little bit of a sales pitch to whoever's going to come in and be the next head coach, or maybe be the next soccer office, front office person, maybe not Heights or Pelzer, depending on how the Chicago Fire want to restructure. And that's my own speculation. I would love to see those guys take on more of a business role and instead of a sporting director, team director, scouting kind of position. But the fact that we've got another international roster spot provides more roster flexibility. And again, with Rafa Chihos also getting his green card last week, that certainly helps their roster flexibility. Some news from the Chicago Fire academies. Their U15 team won the MLS Next Cup championship, defeating LA Galaxy's team 3-1, I believe, in the final. So that is a U15 title for the Chicago Fire. Their goalkeeper, Ivanov, was named the goalkeeper of the tournament. Also, we heard goalkeeping news. Brian Dowd gets loaned out to Nashville's MLS Next pro club, and hopefully can get some minutes with them for the duration of the season. So long story short, the Chicago Fire goalkeeping line is in good hands, if you'll pardon the pun there. Now, like I said, with the move to Believe's network and some of the reformatting, you are going to see some additional episodes. We're going to get ready to wrap things up here in just a second. So in our next episode, we're going to be doing kind of a midweek episode looking at some different MLS headlines, things from around the league, talk a little Aiden Morris maybe. We're also going to look a little bit at Copa America and we're going to go international for a little bit. And we're going to focus on the USMNT's first match, a 2-0 win against Bolivia. And we'll talk a little bit about the Messi effect, some interesting commercials that I have heard over on my Spotify account lately. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in, for listening. Please let me know what you think about the new format. Let me know what you think about the episodes. You can always find me on social media at Glasshouse Soccer, or you can email me, glasshouseSoccer@gmail.com. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. And as always, let's go Fire.